And you want to know what's crazy about this? Is that it almost makes playing the game like gambling. And maybe that's why people hate this game, but they keep playing it, is because every match you're rolling the dice, not knowing if you're going to get a shitty, horrible match. So you roll the dice and you're like, you have a good match. You feel like you've won the lottery. And then you roll the dice and you get a shit match and you're like, oh my God, well, don't worry, I'll ready up. I'll roll the dice again. And you're fucking just scratching and itching and fucking, yeah, God, I'm going to get that good match eventually. I'm going to find that good match. And then you get that good match and you're like, oh, that felt good. Oh, that good match felt good. I'm going to keep on rolling the dice. I'm going to get another good match. And then you fucking get a bad match. Oh, fuck, that was a bad match. But I bet if I ready up again, I'll get a good match. I never thought of it this way. That's why we keep playing DBD. We're all literally fucking gambling every time we ready up. I wanted to do this react video because for a couple reasons. I don't know if you guys remember, like 2 years ago, I made a video talking about the state of DBD being really bad because of cheaters and a number of reasons back then and like the community and stuff. And a lot of people were talking about it. And Scott actually did a reaction to my video back then because he was like doing reaction stuff on his stream. I think like DBD content at that point was really stale and a lot of people were doing reactions. And that's kind of how it feels right now. DBD feels really stale, which we've talked about. And then I recorded a reaction to his reaction. It was just funny how we were just kind of going back and forth with the reactions. On Twitter, he teased that this was like a pretty big DBD video, something he put a good amount of effort into. So a lot of people are making videos talking about DBD being in a bad spot. So I thought we would just watch this and react to it. So,
hey guys, Scott here. The whole point of this video is to prove how Dead by Daylight is a game designed to make people as miserable as possible. When I say that, I don't really mean that like the developers sat around a conference table smoking cigars and like, all right, let's just make people as miserable as possible. Like, this is not an intentional thing. To me, it's sort of like Behavior Interactive, the developers. They like designed a t-shirt and they wanted the t-shirt to be extremely comfortable, so they made it like cotton. But then someone goes to a campfire and then a spark flies onto the shirt, it catches on fire. Like, the developers did not intend for it to be incredibly flammable. They really had good intentions with it. They wanted it to be comfy. They wanted it to be, you know, a good thing. But it's shit's still on fire. So it doesn't change the fact of where we're at with the game. I just wanted to be clear. I don't think this is something they ever, like, intentionally did. It's just a side effect of the way the game has been balanced and designed over the past.
I mean, I agree with that. I think you can kind of tell every time you hear the devs talk or even discuss things on live streams or in the way that they talk about things when they're trying to be transparent with the community on Twitter or on their forums, you could tell that they seem like kind people who want to communicate with the community and want to give the community what they want. I just think a lot of the time they miss the mark. They definitely hear complaints and they acknowledge complaints, but then they'll like roll out patches with things that nobody asked for and be like, there you go.
So there are three main tenets to this, and they all kind of build up to a central point that I want to get to. The first of these main tenets is the map design. Map design has been one of Dead by Daylight's biggest issues since the game came out. In fact, like almost 6 years ago, I made this video saying it's the biggest problem in the game, and I pretty much still stand by that, and I think most people actually would stand by that as well. Map design in Dead by Daylight is a large cause of so many of the frustrations in this game. There are so...
And it's so funny that their fix to this, at least right now, is like, let's just dump a bunch of pallets on random maps. Like, everybody always complains about how terrible the map design is. So what are we going to do? Instead of fixing the actual design of the maps, we're just going to throw a bunch of pallets everywhere. And surely the community will be happy with that. Like, that's just crazy to me that that's the direction that they decided, at least right now. I don't know.
Many variances in terms of balance with regards to maps in this game that the game itself becomes basically impossible to balance. Now, the developers have actually gone on record saying that they want certain maps to favor certain sides. They're okay with a particular map being very killer-sided, and they're okay with a map being very survivor-sided, vice versa, and everything in between. They've said that because they want the underdog experience. They like the idea that a bad player can beat a good player if the stars align and they get a map that's really good for them and everything works out.
I didn't know
them.
They said that.
They want that to be the case. That's intentional. I don't have a clip of this anymore because it happened in a live stream of theirs that I don't even think it's available anymore, like 4 years ago. But they will, without a doubt, said that, and many people in the community can attest to that. So that is something
Wow.
they've gone on record as saying.
Interesting.
And that is nice for the underdog story. I can agree. It does feel good when you beat someone that you know you shouldn't have. When you're playing a weak killer and you beat a really strong 4-man team, that feels great. When you escape against a really top-tier killer and you know you shouldn't have, that feels great. The obvious downside to this is it doesn't account for the other side, which is people being robbed because they just got a bad map. That is not only more common, but it's also more memorable due to negativity bias. People remember negative things far more than they remember positive things. So
True.
You're not really going to remember the one time you got a good map that you won on because you got that map. You're going to remember the 9 times you got a completely shitty map that your killer can't do anything on, for example, and that's going to make you just miserable. It's going to just drain all of the fun from the game. That is the thing that you remember the most. So again, while their intentions are
True.
noble, it really ends up having the reverse effect where people are upset more often than they're happy because nobody likes the feeling of being robbed. In fact, I would summarize this entire map section as nobody is ever happy losing due to like things outside of their control. That always feels bad in everything, in every game, in just life in general. Losing due to things you can't control feels absolutely terrible, and it should be a mission of every game dev to minimize that as much as humanly possible. Obviously, that's not the case in Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight kind of thrives on that. Now, when you have this insane level of disparity, the game is basically impossible to balance. How can you have a killer on one map have 10 pallets and another map has 20 pallets, for example? How can you balance the game uniformly when there's such disparity here? It's impossible. You can't do it. And
Yeah, I don't understand this either. I mean, I don't know if it has to do with the fact that they make some maps that really favor killer and some maps that really favor survivor, and they look at that as balance. They're like, well, it's up to chance, you know, instead of just trying to make every map feel sort of the same for both sides. Maybe they look at it as balancing because it's a roll of the dice for everybody. But I don't understand that thought process really. So yeah, I would agree. I think that if that was their intention, was to give people the idea that they were the underdog for winning on bad maps, then yeah, I think people aren't going to have that feeling as much as they're going to have the feeling of, damn, there's not much I could have done on this map when they lose, because they're going to lose more often than they win probably in those scenarios, unless they're like an insane player with a ton of hours.
when they try to do it, it ends up making the game terrible. For example, right now, recently, they just did a quality of life patch where they added a bunch of pallets on a bunch of maps.
Yep.
Ideally, this was to make killers like the Crossu, who just came out and were very, very strong, a bit weaker. But then it has the side effect of making all the bottom tier killers just like unplayably bad. And so whenever you try to do uniform changes like this in a game that has so much disparity with its maps, it's always going to fail. You can't do that because it's always going to punish someone. Someone is always going to suffer for it. If you make maps weaker, for example, and you make it so the weaker killers are now stronger because of that, all you do is make it so the stronger killers are just even stronger now. And now the survivors are upset. Like I'm saying, when the game has so much disparity between maps and the balancing, in between them, you cannot balance it. It's impossible. Even just aside from balance, there are just maps that rob you of the ability to play the game. Indoor maps are notorious for this. If you are playing a killer, I don't know, like half the killers in the game at this point that require like a direct line of sight to a survivor to do something, and you get a map like Larry's, which is a very congested indoor map that basically only benefits like stealth killers. If you pick the hillbilly who can sprint really fast in straight lines and stuff like that, and then you get Hawkins, you can't do anything. You're just going to hit people with your hammer the whole game, and you're just going to be bored. On the flip side, if you pick a stealth killer that would benefit from those indoor maps, and you get a super wide open map like Ormond, for example, again, how are you going to sneak up to people as Myers on a big white snow map with open fields? You don't really get a chance to play your killers. And again, this is not even really a discussion of balance. This is just, this sucks. I'm not happy playing the game right now, which is arguably more important than the balancing itself. You can have a really, really fun, not balanced game. So that is definitely something that's possible, but a lot of the times I just load into a map and within 1 second I'm already either bored or frustrated or know I'm going to lose or know I'm not going to be able to do anything, whether you're killer or survivor. You shouldn't ever load into a match and the first thing you feel is dread.
That's
Next
true.
of the main
That's a good
tenets
point.
of this whole video is perk balance. Now
you feel that. I feel that a lot when I play. You play killer, you load into bat in preschool, you want to turn the game off. You play survivor, you load into like midwich and you want to turn the game off. I feel that.
I think perk balance is not as big of an issue because with the maps, you can't really choose where you go. The game just decides that for you and you're just stuck with whatever you get. There are some map offerings, but they've been heavily nerfed to where you can't really guarantee maps anymore. So for the most part, you don't really have control over the map that you go to. Perks, on the other hand, you do have a lot more control over, so it's not as big of an issue. While that is true, it's not as big of an issue. It's still an absolutely massive issue to the game because perks basically exist to band-aid problems with Dead by Daylight. That's just simply how they've done it. Perks are just things that you can equip on your killer or survivor that bestow various effects, and Dead by Daylight has a lot of problems, and they don't ever really try to fix the problems themselves. They try to normally throw perks on top of that so you can equip things that fix these issues. Let me just give you a perfect example of the insane disparity between perks. Let me give you an example of someone being tunneled off the hook. If you're unaware what that phrase means, tunneling off the hook is when someone has been put on a hook because they were downed by the killer, and to be tunneled off the hook is as soon as that person gets unhooked, the killer beams right back to them and immediately tries to down them.
I've never heard of this term. Are you guys familiar? Did he say tunneling? That's what it's called? I don't know what that is. I've never done that before. Never heard of such a thing.
Again. Now, there are a couple of built-in protections for this, but they don't last very long, and let's give a perfect example. Let's say someone has a healing build. They have a bunch of healing perks on. They can heal people really fast, and that's what they brought. Not even a meme build. It's not a joke build. It's a very strong build. It just doesn't have anything to do with getting tunneled. So you get hooked, then some survivor unhooks you, then the killer immediately decides to tunnel
tunneling asshole.
What's going to happen is the killer is going to wait 10 seconds because you have 10 seconds of basically invulnerability off a hook. After that 10 seconds, he's just going to smack you. You're going to go down. He's going to pick you up and put you back on the hook. You're now one step closer to dying. You didn't really get to do anything. That's that. So that feels terrible. Now let's go over someone that didn't have a healing build. They have a specifically anti-tunnel build. So
and
what
then they
happens
don't
is
get
the
tunneled,
killer
right?
will wait 10 seconds and he goes to hit. Except you had off the record. So now the killer actually doesn't down you. Off the record gives you basically 40 seconds of protection off the hook now. So now you get hit, you get a speed burst, you get to go further. Killer's got to catch back up, get another hit. Killer finally catches up, out mind games you, whatever, downs you, then picks you up. Except, nope, you have Decisive Strike. Decisive Strike is a perk that allows you to stun the killer when they pick you up if you've been recently hooked. So now you are stunned, killer drops you, and they're just going to have to chase you again. So then you get another 20 seconds of distance or 15 seconds of distance or what have you, depends on the map. And the killer finally catches up, and now they down you, or they try to down you, they swing at you, except now you have the perk Dead Hard, which activates after you've been unhooked, and when you press a button, you get a brief invulnerability window, basically. So the killer hits you during that, and yet again, you've been hit a third time, and you get another speed burst, and the killer's got to chase you again. This process takes like an additional minute because you click 3 buttons. That is the insane disparity here. That is now suddenly a game-winning decision from the killer is now a game-losing decision from the killer because of a particular build that a survivor decided to put on.
I don't know if this is a bad thing, though. I don't know if this is a bad thing. I mean, I think maybe it's just because of the nature of the game, but I think, for me, I think that's, while it can be really frustrating, it is also kind of what makes DBD fun and unique in the sense of, like, you kind of have to make a decision, right? Like, when a survivor gets unhooked and you want them out of the game, maybe because you're in a bad spot, it's always kind of taking a chance. Like, I could tunnel this person and it could be the best decision I've ever made, or I could tunnel this person and I could just end up in the worst possible scenario because they all have anti-tunnel perks. And I kind of strangely like that aspect of it, where it's like, yeah, it's like gambling. Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, like I said, you just have to make a decision. It's like looping too. Like when you're baiting windows or, trying to, or moonwalking or whatever, you're trying to sort of mind game the killer or the survivor, and perks don't necessarily It's not like you mind gaming them, right? You can absolutely use your perks to mind game, but I don't know. I think it's good that DBD is filled with choices. I'm bad at looping, but healing and gens I can do all day. Someone doing chases for me is good. Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, what I thought he was going to say is I thought he was going to say, like, you bring a full anti-tunnel build, and then the killer doesn't tunnel you for 10 matches, and then you just don't ever use your perks, and then you put on your healing build again, and then you do get tunneled, and then you also don't get to use your healing build because you were tunneled all game. That's what I thought he was going to get at, whereas, like, you know, half the time you'll bring a full build for something, and then you don't even get to use it because of just how the match plays out. That's something I notice all the time. And you notice that when people talk about, like, the deliverance curse, how whenever you bring deliverance, you're the first survivor found every time, and you never get to use deliverance. You bring anti-tunnel perks, you don't get tunneled or chased or found the entire match. Like, I don't know, it's just weird how sometimes it feels like the perks are cursing you. I don't know. It's funny. But in a sense, if you think about it, if you bring a full anti-tunnel build and then you just don't get chased by the killer because of the curse, in a sense it kind of worked, right? Because then you didn't get tunneled in a way.
The disparity between situations here leads to so many frustrations in the community. And here's the issue. Everyone is both right and wrong at the same time. That's why there's so much arguing in this community, because someone, like the second guy that's got the anti-tunnel build, might go, tunneling's not an issue. Just equip these perks. The killer will throw the game if they try to do it. But the first guy that had nothing of the sort, no defenses, might think tunneling is way too strong. And they would both be correct. It depends entirely on the build that they
see. That I agree with. I completely agree with the perks you bringing having a gigantic impact on how you perceive the game as a whole, or perceive the match, obviously, because yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the case. If you get tunneled and you don't have anti-tunneling perks, you're going to be like, wow, tunneling is the worst thing ever. I didn't even get to play the game. I got like 3,000 points that game. I'm out of the game at 5 gens. That was miserable. But then if you have anti-tunnel perks and, you know, second chance perks up the wazoo, then you're going to get chased the whole game when the killer tunnels you, and you're going to think it's a blast. Like, you're going to have so much fun. So yeah, it is interesting that depending on your play style and the perks you bring, it truly does impact how you even view the game as a whole, which I think is very interesting.
And this applies to most aspects of DBD in general. You can have someone that thinks slugging is way too strong, except some guy's got Unbreakable or Boon Exponential or one of the other 10 perks, Conviction, that involves getting slugged, or We're Gonna Live Forever, or Made for This, or there are so many perks that deal with slugging, and if people have those perks, slugging no longer an issue. If you don't have those perks, it can be really strong. And again, people are gonna argue with each other saying, it's too strong, it's not strong enough, it does nothing. And they're both correct at the same time, because you can't account for the insane disparity between the builds and the things that they allow you to do. That's the main problem here. These are issues that have to be addressed by base kit features, and they recently attempted this. They just went way overboard in a lot of scenarios, but I'm hoping they stick with that and refine it to be something that you don't need builds for, because when you have scenarios like this where things can be so miserable for any given side, unless you bring the perks to counter them, suddenly there aren't 200 perks in this game. There's like 15, because you don't really have the freedom to choose whatever you want. You gotta choose the meta, or you're just gonna get left behind and get completely screwed over. So that just results in build monotony, seeing the same things over and over again, which leads to
yeah, you know, I saw someone talk about this, because in the video I made talking about DBD being miserable, I kind of talked about that, how you, like, with the meta, you just see the same perks over and over again, and it makes you want to run the meta over and over again, and everybody just talks about, you know, everybody just wants to bring the meta. And I got a couple comments that were like, oh, if you never played a game, you know, if you never played a multiplayer game before, you don't know what meta is, you never played competitive games. And I'm kind of like, well, that's the point. Like, I don't want Dead by Daylight to feel like that. I don't want this 1v4 asymmetrical horror game to feel like I can't use 95% of the perks or things in the game because I have to use the meta. It's just, I don't know, it just feels shitty to even say when talking about this game. I just wish it could be way more fun and silly. Like, just imagine if they did have more of these features, like the meta stuff, but like less, and they had it base kit, and then all of the perks in the game were more like fun, goofy stuff. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm fully aware that multiplayer games all have metas and what's strong, and you see that, more than other stuff. But for a game like DBD, it just feels bad. And I know a lot of people think the game is competitive, and I know there's a competitive scene for it. I'm not trying to take away from that, but I just think the game as a whole, I wish would just be less competitive or feel less competitive. I don't know. I think a lot of people probably feel that way. They just want the game to feel more lax, chill, fun, goofy. And I don't mean goofy as in like not scary, because it could still be you could still have all the horror aspect, but not just have it feel like a sweat fest for both sides all the time.
Which leads to people being miserable. It's all connected. These are all just interconnected webs of butterfly effects that lead to the ultimate end goal of I'm bored. Now, the final tenet of this whole discussion is the matchmaking. Dead by Daylight's matchmaking is legendary for how absurdly terrible it is. Yeah. It's the kind of matchmaking where you can have one game with people that are nearly impossible to beat and another game right after where they have no idea what they're doing. And there's just no way to understand what you're going to get. And that's because the way that this system determines skill is absolutely terrible. For survivors, it's counted as a win if you simply escape the match. Nothing else matters. Meaning if you ran the killer for 45 minutes while your team did 7,000 generators, but then you die at the end because of that, you're worse than your teammates whose MMR goes up and yours goes down. The game does not...
The MMR is terrible. However, this is something that's on their roadmap, or something that I think that they're going to be doing this winter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that they're like reworking MMR. They're making it based on more specific things. Like I think, for example, I think your survivor MMR will have to do with your chase time and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. They haven't really given a ton of specifics from what I understand, but at least this is something that I think they're going to be changing or like working on soon. I don't know. It's just a clusterfuck. It's just so funny to me because before DBD had skill-based matchmaking, it was exactly the same. You would always run into either insane survivors or you'd run into clueless survivors. And same with killers, vice versa. And then they added skill-based matchmaking, and it's the fucking same. You still run into insane survivors, and then the next match you run into clueless survivors. Even with skill-based matchmaking. Like, it hasn't even really changed anything.
Account for actual skill on the survivor side. On the killer side, it's a bit more fair, because typically if you're killing everybody, you're probably doing a good job. But for survivor, there are so many variables that go into it that to have a system that is so vague and only goes off of one metric, you're going to have a scenario where even if people have the exact same MMR, their skill levels can wildly differ. So the system, even if it worked perfectly, would still be flawed because the values that people are being rated on are completely inaccurate. So even if the systems match people with the exact MMR together, it would still have insane disparity from match to match. Now, it doesn't do that though. It actually has a soft cap, which basically means once you get to that level of MMR, you match with anybody at or above that level forever. So if you have 1800 MMR, you can go against people with 83 trillion MMR. It's the same according to the matchmaking. And again, there's a wide disparity there on top of that too. Now, they did that because they kind of had to. When they first introduced MMR, there was a time, a very short time, where actually the system worked pretty well and it accurately put people of the exact same MMRs together, except people were waiting an hour for a game. Content creators couldn't play the game anymore. Like, we actually just had to stop playing DBD because you had to wait an hour for a match to find an actually accurate team to your skill level.
I remember that.
Because of that, yes, the matches were accurate, but no one could play the game. So I understand why they made that change and why they added that soft cap. It was sort of a necessary evil, but it does, again, come from good intentions. Like I said, it's back to the cotton shirt analogy. They had good intentions here, but the unfortunate side effect is we have just such insane disparities of skill level that no two matches can ever be compared by the same metric. So again, you could have someone saying Survive with Friends is overpowered, and then you look at a match of Timmys that are playing their first game of Dead by Daylight together, and they're terrible, and they don't know what to do, and by that metric, Survive with Friends is not at all overpowered. But then you got a 4-man comp team that you encounter the next game in the same MMR.
See, but this might be a hot take. I kind of like that, though. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I like the variety of going against insane sweat lords and then going against people who are, have 20 hours in the game. I like that. I think that's way better than going against people who are constantly as close to your hour level, Sweaty matches constantly sounds like hell. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really want to play a DBD where if it's only all new players and bad players playing against new players and bad players, and then it's only experienced and good players playing against experienced and good players. Like, that just sounds like, I don't know. I really like the randomness. I like the chaos. Like, yeah, it could definitely feel drastic sometimes, and it's kind of like, holy shit. But again, I kind of like that. Scott sounds like he wants to win it. No, I don't think Scott cares about winning every match. In fact, I think Scott believes that you shouldn't win every match. I think he's very much like in that kind of, people who expect to win every match. It's kind of silly. Nobody should win every single match of the game that they play, whether it's Dead by Daylight or any game. Like, that's insane.
And they're impossible to beat. So again, you can have someone saying Survive with Friends is too strong, someone saying it's completely fine, and again, they're both correct, because you cannot possibly compare with such an insane disparity of skill level between each match. You can't compare match-to-match gameplay. It's just impossible. And again, it's just the disparity there. So if the matchmaking doesn't work, we can't have good balancing discussions because we don't even know the metric we're basing it off of. You have to have a baseline level to discuss balancing. You can't discuss balancing based off people that don't know what they're doing, because then everything is too strong or everything is too weak and vice versa. But you can't go against the absolute top level comp players because they literally play by a different set of rules entirely. So where do you even begin looking for this kind of thing? All the disparity here makes these discussions almost impossible, and it's a source of a lot of frustration and misery for a lot of people both playing and discussing the game. So, those are the three main tenets that result in the game being miserable.
This might sound silly, but it almost feels like the best way to eliminate the frustration in regards to this is to just, like, accept it. I guess, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if you can come to terms with the fact that you are going to have really easy matches and really rough matches, because that's just the nature of the game, and if you could truly come to terms with that, hey, you don't know what you're going to get, I think that kind of clears up. I think that kind of helps solve it. If you can mentally get over that hill of just accepting it. It sounds silly, and it sounds like, I came to terms with that long ago. I mean, you kind of have to, right? If you play the game, if you play the game a lot, you kind of have to come to terms with it because it's not changing. And it's like he said, this is something that's kind of impossible in a sense because of the game's design. It's kind of impossible to do anything else. Like, I don't really know how you would perfectly balance a game like this. So you're better off just letting the chaos just erupt, and just the player base just needs to accept it. And, you might get frustrated in matches and complain here and there. Oh, this game sucks. This game's this sided, that sided, because everybody gets frustrated playing games. But at the end of the day, I think this, like, having the chaos the way it is probably better than if we just, like, really fine-tuned the balancing. and everybody was constantly going against their skill level or experience level, I think that would be worse, probably. I mean, it could be interesting to see if they figured it out and see what the result is, but I don't know if I'd like that. I think you'd also probably have a lot more people smurfing, either creating new accounts or doing the thing where they ready up and just purposely throw matches to tank their MMR. You'll probably see that a lot more, you know? Yo, Laney, thank you for the 26 months. Great to see you. Why have ranking then? It means nothing if the game is a jumble of ass, respectfully. Well, no, I agree with what you're saying there, though. Like, I agree that this game doesn't need skill-based matchmaking. And that's the thing, is skill-based matchmaking hasn't even made a difference. Because I already said this, but before skill-based matchmaking, you would play against sweats and clueless people. Or brand new people. They add in skill-based matchmaking. What happens? You play against skilled, experienced people, and then you play against complete noobs. The same thing happens. So I don't really know that skill-based matchmaking has even changed. Like, people complain about it all the time, but at the same time, like, what has really changed? What has really changed? At the end of the day, like, the only difference is you're not playing against brand new players. Like, I think with this skill-based matchmaking that they've added, I think like you, but then again, I see people that post about, you know, they went against somebody with 5 hours in the game. So I don't know. The whole thing's a mess. The whole thing's a mess. It's just chaos.
But they all go to a central point. I don't know if you caught on, but there was something in every single one of these.
Oh, did they lock MMR so you can't DMMR? Okay. I didn't know anything. I don't honestly know too much about MMR, like the little details of it. So if that's true, then I didn't know that.
Sections that I repeated, and it is the main core issue that they all kind of come from. The actual main issue with Dead by Daylight is the match-to-match disparity in terms of the difficulty involved with that match. That is really the core issue why this game is just so miserable for so many people, because you have no idea what the hell you're gonna get. It's like if you played a round of Counter-Strike and sometimes you just spawned in with no money. And sometimes you spawn in with $30,000 to buy everything on round one. There's no eco round. Everyone just starts with ops and shit. Like,
dude, and you want to know what's crazy about this? Is that it almost makes playing the game like gambling. And maybe that's why people hate this game, but they keep playing it, is because every match you're rolling the dice, not knowing if you're going to get a shitty, horrible match. So you roll the dice and you're like, you have a good match. You feel like you've won the lottery. And then you roll the dice and you get a shit match and you're like, oh my god, well, don't worry, I'll ready up, I'll roll the dice again. And you're fucking just scratching and itching and fucking, yeah, god, I'm gonna get that good match eventually. I'm gonna find that good match. And then you get that good match and you're like, oh, that felt good. Oh, that good match felt good. I'm gonna keep on rolling the dice. I'm gonna get another good match. And then you fucking get a bad match. Oh, fuck, that was a bad match. But I bet if I ready up again, I'll get a good match. You know? I never thought of it that way, but shit. That's why we keep playing DBD. We're all literally fucking gambling every time we ready up. I never thought of it this way. But that's what it is. We're gambling, dude.
that is sort of what Dead by Daylight is. That's why it's so incredibly frustrating, and it leads to this endless cycle. In a nutshell, this is the cycle. You can just play casually, having a good time, running whatever you want. Eventually, you're going to very quickly encounter a difficulty mismatch, whether it's because the map that you're on is too strong, the builds you're going against are too strong, the matchmaking didn't work. Any of these three core tenets can result in this scenario, but the end result is, for some reason, this is not an equally set match. Something is hugely imbalanced here for any one of these reasons. So you're going to encounter this. Again, doesn't matter what the reason is, but you'll encounter that. So then your rationality would be there. Well, the last thing I went against is unfair. I got a really bad map. I got a really strong team. They had really good perks. I was playing a really weak killer. The matchmaking was really bad. Whatever. The last thing I went against was unfair. So now next game, I'm going to bring something really stronger to mitigate those imbalances. I'm going to minimize the chance of the game screwing me over by bringing in something much, much stronger and going super, super hard and trying to win. But then the next game, it works in the opposite direction. There's a massive overkill due to encounter difficulty going in the other way. The map is really in your favor this time. Matchmaking was really in your favor. The survivor perks are not really good against the killer you brought. You're playing Plague and they all brought healing builds, for example. Whatever the variable is, this next game is vastly overkill and was way too easy. So then you go, okay, fine, that was ridiculous. Let's tone it back a bit. Then you go back to playing casually again. And then the cycle just repeats forever. So you can see here how the...
Yeah, so the only thing I would say is it feels like... So this is similar to how I would describe my cycle, except, however, I know a lot of players probably feel this way about things feeling unfair. I just don't agree with that, the unfair aspect. 100% I will have a terrible match where I got destroyed, and then I'm like, you know what? I really want to have a chill match. I really just want to not have to deal with that. So then you do this. I agree. But I think people need to kind of, and I'm not saying Scott is saying, wah, DBD is not fair, but I think people need to get rid of that wah, it's not fair mentality, because when you're ready up for a match, that it's we talked about it, you don't know what you're going to get. So in a sense, like, everybody has the same chance to get something good or bad, right? The survivors have a readying up with a chance to get a really insanely sweaty killer on a good killer map. The killers are rolling the dice for the same thing on the opposite side. So while it maybe feels unfair in the moment, again, like I mentioned, if you were to just accept that the nature of the game is chaos and you might have a good match, you might have a bad match, I don't think looking at it as being unfair is healthy. I don't think it's healthy.
And then the cycle just repeats forever. So you can see here how the disparity in the match that you actually get and the difficulty in how much you have to try, a lot of the things being outside of your control, results in so much people being upset all at once, because everyone's right, everyone's wrong, everyone's frustrated, everyone's having a good time, all at the same time. It's pure chaos. So I have said a bunch of things about this game that are a problem, but it would be unfair to talk about these problems and not suggest solutions here. And I've talked about this kind of previously before, but I really think the only way Dead by Daylight can handle these actual issues with the game is to acknowledge the game is an unbalanced, chaotic mess. You need to stop trying to do blanket changes to everything all at once. It never works. There are always going to be some group of people that get screwed over because the difference between F tier and S tier, be it perk, killer, balance, map, anything, is so varied you cannot make blanket changes to the game. They need to be specific. And the good news is they kind of hinted at this possibly being a thing they're looking into. On the PTB for the anti-tunnel and anti-slugging changes, they did mention that some killers, the top tier killers, would not benefit as much from like these unique hook benefits from that change. It indicated that they knew who the strong killers were, and those killers should receive less of a benefit than the weaker killers. That, I think, is the correct way to go.
True.
For example, if you're playing a bottom tier killer, if you're playing Ghostface or Myers or Pig or Dredge or any of these killers that are really weak, maybe the map spawns less pellets. Maybe it spawns one more dead zone. Maybe this map has 13 pellets instead of another map that might have 18 pellets. You can cater the resources of the game itself to reflect how strong the thing that people are encountering actually is. And the killer is going to be the main determining factor on the level of strength involved in that match there. And so you can make it so the weaker killers just have less resources that they have to encounter, and the stronger killers will have more resources. Again, it's a very small change, and I'm not really sure how much it would help, but it's more about the mindset of these changes. That's more of the correct way to do it. You have to not kid yourself into thinking that you're going to balance all the killers. Like, I've talked to people about this, and I've suggested these things before, and these are really smart people that have said, I don't think that's a good idea. I think what they should do is just make it so all the weakest killers are much stronger. Make it so all the worst maps are more balanced. Yeah, in theory, that would be great.
But how?
But it's been almost 9 years.
Yeah.
When are you going to stop deluding yourself into realizing that's just simply not going to happen? It's an Ouroboros. At the same rate that they fix a previous problem, they introduce 2 new problems.
Yep.
Just recently, they introduced the Crossu, who was way too strong, so they need to emergency fix that, so all their attention is on her. And then we have Myers, like in that one meme with him sitting drowning under the pool, just like forgotten, and he's just been made terrible. And now Myers is probably going to be terrible for years. The whole point is whenever they try to fix something, they break something else, and it's just, we're never going to be in a scenario. It's been 9 years. We're never going to be in a state where everything is actually balanced, so now we can do blanket changes to the game, and it's perfectly fine to do that. They need to acknowledge the game is wildly imbalanced and go from there. You can even do this with perks too. This is far more experimental, but
they need to embrace the chaos of it. They need to stop worrying about trying to fine-tune balance every little tiny thing and find a way to embrace the chaos and the fun, because I don't know. I think that's if you can embrace the chaos and the fun and then really hammer that in and hammer that home and until the player base can accept that that's what this game is, at that point, I think DBD hits its peak. I truly believe that. If we could just get this game to be chaotic fun, like that is when DBD is at its peak. And if the game was like that all the time, and most of the player base felt that from the game, instead of it trying to pretend to be all of these other things and trying to just overbalance this and overtune and over-nerf and overcompensate, undercompensate. It's just, yeah. The game has so much potential to just be a really fun horror game, a really fun multiplayer horror game. And it's just, I don't know what direction we're headed right now.
Acknowledging certain perks are stronger than others would work with like a point system. I actually very briefly worked on like a tournament for this, but it was just so much work for no reward, I gave up on it. But basically, you can assign certain perks certain values based on how strong they are. A perk like Decisive Strike would be a lot of points to equip for a build. A more useless perk would be, 1 perk, for example. And you can have builds be generated like that, so you can release perks that might not even in design be able to be super strong, but they don't cost as much, so you can have a more stress-free build by putting that on, basically. So there are plenty of ways to do this stuff. All of the message I'm trying to say is it just all comes from acknowledging that the game is broken and working with that. Don't fight against the current. Acknowledge the game is insanely varied from weakest to strongest depending on various different factors and go from there. That's so much better than just pretending we're going to fix everything and doing blanket changes that fuck over half the player base every time they do it. So overall, I think that is why DBD is just so miserable to play. The insane disparity between the difficulty of each match that you get means you can't prepare for it. You don't know what you're going to get. And if you over-prepare, you're bullying people that are going to then have a miserable time, who are then going to over-prepare, who are going to give another group a miserable time, who are then going to... It's just an endless cycle of people just being miserable. And due to how much disparity there is, people are arguing with each other non-stop. And it's impossible to win these arguments because no one is wrong or right. Because given any given particular scenario, they can both be right or wrong at the exact same time. That's why there's just so much frustration and just like misery in the community. It's that. That's the main reason.
That's true. These like debates of whether killer or survivor is stronger, all these things, like these are debates and frustrations and arguments that are going to carry on until the end of time. Like people are going to be in their fucking in nursing homes arguing about whether or not DBD is or was killer sided or survivor sided. It just yeah, people we all do it. I engage in that all the time. And my opinion changes all the time. I've gone from this game is killer sided to this game is survivor sided to this game is killer sided. My opinion changes all the time. And I think it's fun to have those discussions. But I think often people get way too invested. People, do what DBD community does and start personally attacking and getting real crazy with their opinions and, without just having a civil fucking conversation. But yeah, I think the simplest solution or solutions, and whether it's possible or not, is for behavior to, like Scott said, acknowledge the game is a chaotic mess, lean on it, and try to build off of that. And then the other part of it is the community, all of us, myself included, like just looking at the game through that lens of chaotic fun and not expecting to have a good match every time, not expecting to win every game, not expecting anything. Like, if everybody could just learn to expect chaos and expect the ride that is DBD, which is this, and that became the mindset, then I think people are less frustrated because they know what they're getting into. They know what's, yeah. Good video.